Here's this week's My Boat feature.
Hardtops are all the rage on new express cruisers these days. But if you have an older express, can you retrofit a top? You bet. This week on My Boat, we're going to fit a custom hardtop on this Bayliner Avante. Hey, Richard.
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Just great.
Great.
Looks like you're all set to go.
We are. We've taken the radar arch off already. Now we just got to take the old top off and we can get going.
Is the new top in?
Yeah, it just showed up the other day.
Let's go take a look at it, then we can get started.
With the unwrapping out of the way, it was time to start assembling the hardtop. First up was the port aluminum support leg that was set in place, then secured with the supplied hardware and an Allen wrench. Then the port leg was installed. With the legs on, Richard and I checked the remaining hardware and pre-assembled several of the mounting components. Up on the boat, final measurements were taken for the height and width of the hardtop and transferred to the support legs. The legs were marked and all 4 aluminum tubes were cut to their final length and the mount set in place. After padding the mounts and drafting a few bodies to help, the hardtop was standing right side up. Before the hardtop was lifted into place on the boat, access to the insides of the gunnels were opened up from the mid-cabin and through the cockpit wet bar. Now, the instructions from American Towers for setting the hardtop in place suggested building a wooden support frame in the cockpit, but we opted for the easy route. Beacon Bay Marina's forklift made lifting the top into position relatively effortless. After removing the padding, the starboard aft mount was positioned in small increments. One hole was drilled for the mounting bolt. While Rich had the tough job reaching in through the access, I slid in the first bolt. After he had the backer, washers, and lock nut in place, I tightened it up. Next, measurements were taken of this mount's position for reference to accurately locate the port aft mount. After transferring the measurements and drilling one hole, the hardware was secured. Moving to the forward mount, a block of wood was used to support the mount. After checking fore and aft measurements for the correct height, shims were inserted to raise the forward mounts. As with the aft mounts, a hole was drilled and the bolt and backing and hardware were tightened down. Next up was drilling the remaining holes in the 4 mounts and securing the hardware. After loosening the single bolts, silicone was applied behind the mounts and all of the hardware was permanently fastened down on all 4 mounts. We then moved to the front supports for the top, where the process of positioning, drilling, and securing the mount was repeated. With the required length measured, both tubes were cut to length. Back on the boat, the base mount was secured, the upper mount set in place, and the holes drilled in the top's outer tube. With the holes drilled, threads were cut using a tack. After applying silicone, the upper mounts were secured to the tubes on both sides. My final task for this project was to drill 2 holes through all of the support tubes and into each of the solid M100 mount fittings. Then the holes were threaded and the bolts secured.
Oh, Rich, this looks pretty great. It went on relatively easily if you have a forklift, but overall, impressive. So what's left in the project?
Just a few finishing touches, the wiring and the canvas.
Well, we're going to leave Rich to do all of that, the finishing touches, but we'll be back when the project's completed. Well, there you go. The project's finished. The fiberglass has been repaired where the old radar arch used to be. All the canvas work is done, and I think overall, Richard's got a rather unique and pretty good-looking Bayliner.